Before Balerion crossed the Blackwater, every king in Westeros believed in something. Harren believed in stone. Argilac believed in courage. Mern Gardener believed in numbers. Torrhen Stark believed in the north, and winter, and distance. 2 years later, the Black Dragon had disproven all of them. The old world simply stopped existing. Aegon's conquest is always told like a war. 3 dragons, 7 kings, a new throne. But that framing misses the real violence. Because Aegon did not just defeat 6 rival monarchs. He walked each of them, one by one, through a private discovery that everything they had built their power on was already obsolete. By the end of this, you will understand why Balerion did not simply burn Westeros into submission. You will see the exact moment each king realized the thing they trusted most. The wall, the charge, the army, the bloodline had just become a relic. And you will see why one king chose to kneel before the fire ever reached his gates. This is the Black Dread. Subscribe, or the White Colossus might find you. Start with the truth the kings of Westeros did not understand. Balerion was not a wardrake Aegon raised. He was a survivor of Valyria, a black-scaled monster with black fire and wings so vast his shadow could swallow whole towns when he passed overhead. His teeth were as long as swords. His jaws could swallow an aurochs whole. When the Conquest began in 2 BC, he was already at least about 112 years old, older than half the royal lines in Westeros, older than most of their living memory. He had already burned a Volantine fleet off the coast of Lys. He had already seen kingdoms die. Aegon was not riding a weapon. He was riding history. And when that shadow crossed the Blackwater rush with fewer than 1,600 men, the 7 kingdoms had about 2 years left before every one of their certainties was stripped away. The first casualty of the old world was Harren the Black. Harren had spent nearly 40 years building Harrenhal, the largest castle ever raised in Westeros. Thousands died digging the stones up. The riverlands were bled white paying for it. And he believed, honestly, that he had built something eternity itself could not touch. When Aegon rode up under a banner of parley, Harren gave him the line history would never let him forget. "Stone does not burn," Aegon answered, calm as a grave. "When the sun sets, your line shall end." That night, Balerion climbed until the sentries lost him in the clouds and dove inside the walls. Dragonfire so hot the towers of Harrenhal glowed like candles, then melted, then twisted into the lumped, broken shapes they still wear today. Harren and his sons died inside the tower men now call Kingspire. House Hoare was extinguished in a single night. Harrenhal was not just destroyed. Harrenhal was disproven. That was the first lesson. Argilac Durandon was not a fool. He heard what happened to Harren, and he understood faster than most that dying inside stone was a coward's death now. So he chose the opposite. He marched out to meet the Targaryens in open battle in a howling thunderstorm, with almost twice the men and 4 times the heavy horse. By every old rule of war, he was supposed to win. His vanguard broke the Baratheon center. His knights ran deep into the Targaryen line, and then Meraxes descended out of the storm. Dragonfire killed his personal guard. Argilac was thrown from his saddle, refused to yield, and died on Orys Baratheon's sword. He did everything a warrior king was supposed to do. He read the ground. He attacked first. He used the weather. He led from the front, and the sky interrupted the battle anyway. That was the second lesson. The old courage, done exactly right, still ended in ash. Then came the West. Mern Gardener of the Reach and Loren Lannister of the Rock did something no Westerosi kings had done in centuries. They set aside a 1,000-year rivalry and combined their hosts. 55,000 men, more than 5,000 knights, the largest army ever raised on the continent. Against them, 11,000 Targaryen soldiers and 3 dragons. The numbers did not matter. They never had. When Balerion, Vhagar, and Meraxes unleashed their fire together, the only battle in history where all 3 of Aegon's dragons fought on the same field, 4,000 men burned alive where they stood. 30,000 more threw down their swords and surrendered on the spot. Mern Gardener and every heir of his line died in the flames. House Gardener ended in a single afternoon. That was the third lesson. The biggest army in Westeros was also suddenly tinder, and this is where the story becomes human. Torrhen Stark marched 30,000 Northmen down the King's Road. When he reached the Trident, 45,000 Targaryen troops and 3 dragons were waiting. His bastard half-brother, Brandon Snow, begged him for the chance to cross the river at night and murder the dragons in their sleep. Half his lords wanted to fight, half wanted to fall back to Moat Cailin and let winter finish the war for them. Torrhen did neither. He had seen the ruins of Harrenhal on the road south. He had heard the accounts of the Field of Fire. And somewhere between the black stones and the smoke, he understood something every other king had refused to understand in time. The war was already over. The next morning, the king who knelt laid his crown at Aegon's feet and walked away. Warden of the North, he was not broken, he was awake. And that is where most tellings stop. The kings fell. Aegon won. A new dynasty began. Clean history, closed book. But that is not what actually happened. What actually happened is quieter and worse. After every battle, Aegon collected the swords of Harren's dying sons, the swords of Mern Gardener's burning nights, the swords of Argilac's last charge. 1,000 blades, taken from 1,000 defeated men who believed the old world was still standing. He piled them in King's Landing, and he flew Balerion above them. Balerion's fire, the same fire that had melted the towers of Harrenhal, fused those swords into the Iron Throne. The chair Aegon sat on, and every Targaryen after him, was literally the melted weapons of the kings who had believed stone, or courage, or numbers, or blood could save them from a black dragon out of Valyria. Balerion did not just conquer Westeros, he became the throne. And every king who ruled after, every Baratheon, every Lannister, every Stark seated in a southern hall, sat on a chair forged out of the swords of men who thought their walls were thick enough. The dragons left, the dragons died, but the throne remained, waiting for the next king who would believe the old rules still worked. Out of all the kings who faced Aegon, Harren, Argilac, Mern, Torrhen, Shara Arryn, Maria Martell, who read the New World correctly and who was the biggest fool? Drop your order in the comments and I'll pin the sharpest answer. I'm your maester at the Black Dread. Subscribe if you love Balerion. You don't want to be on his bad side.